Welcome to the MLB Early Bird Podcast right here on Awesemo.com. I am Jason Foy, as always here. I am joined by Terry McBride here on a Sunday evening as we get you ready for Monday's slate of MLB action. Before we even start kind of getting into these games, Terry, something we got to note about Monday's slate. If you're playing on DraftKings, we've got a 6:37 p.m. Eastern Time main slate start, but however on FanDuel and Yahoo their main slate is 7:05. They do have some all-day slates over there, so as you're developing your rosters on Monday, that's something you got to think about. The two games that you're getting on the main slate on DK that you're not getting on FanDuel and Yahoo would be the Yankee Blue Jay game and the Brewer Reds game. But obviously we did the MLB Live Before Lock show on Friday, and yeah, I mean, you had to be all of those Dodger stacks all weekend long. But, man, there were some other stacks that ended up coming. You mentioned about the Braves on Friday. They come through cash for you. And unfortunately, some of my I had a Rays stack on Friday night. That didn't do too well as they only got one run. Glasnow got in a little trouble early on in that game. But how was MLB DFS for you over the past couple of days?
Yeah, I tell you what, MLB beat me up a little bit. I had similar experience to you. We nailed that Braves game on Friday. I think we talked about it. Jeff talked about it. I think we got it backward and forward, and somehow I didn't end up with enough of it. That's been like the story of my year. We've been talking about all these different things and really focusing in on some good plays. And then when I check my lineups, I'm like, I must have done well. I was talking about that all day. Not really in there, so. Not really sure what's been going on, but I had myself a very nice little NFL day. Took down a GPP today, so getting back in the black for the last little while anyway. So it was a nice day today.
Yeah, for me, I'm just trying to get caught up on everything happening in NFL today with working on the Buccaneers Radio Network broadcast. Obviously, I know what happened to Bucs Panthers. We'll see about Christian McCaffrey, the injury, the ankle injury that he suffered. Left the game in the fourth quarter, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it's usually Sunday night, Monday is me kind of catching up on everything else that happened in the NFL. And of course, once we get to Tuesday, start watching some of that all 22 tape, which is, it's definitely something. I mean, look, even as a DFS player, I'm telling you, it's something you can definitely take advantage of. And obviously, one thing I always recommend, I know this is an MLB podcast, but in terms of NFL, just because that is really my world, is look at the game books, because now in the game books, they put the player participation chart. So you know exactly how many snaps each player got. That's a little DFS hack for you. You go over that game book on NFL.com. You can get a little. You might be surprised to see who's getting more snaps than maybe other players. So that's something definitely to take advantage of. Of course, this show is sponsored by Yahoo. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They're the most trusted name in fantasy sports. Yahoo DFS now includes CSV upload, CSV edit features. For those looking to play multiple lines, make better choices, choose Yahoo Daily Fantasy. No shocker coming up on Monday night of Jake DeGrom is the most expensive pitcher all across the board. There should be absolutely no surprise about that. It does have an interesting matchup against the Rays up there in New York. We'll talk about that as we go on, but let's get right into it here. We got the Yankees and the Blue Jays. As we do this show, the Yankees have not officially come out and said who is starting for them. We're believing it's going to be Jordan Montgomery. DK does have a price out on him of $7,200. FanDuel and Yahoo do not have prices on him. For the Blue Jays, Matt Shoemaker is going to get the start, and I will tell you, DK did not have a line on him. DK actually had a line on Tanner Roark, so he was 7,000. So maybe they'll fit in Matt Shoemaker at that spot as well.
And those guys are probably, for DFS purposes, essentially interchangeable pieces that you don't want really either part of. I actually wrote up Rourke. I had that information on my side as well. But going up against the Yankees, I really don't want either side of those pitchers. The lineup is healthy. They've just been crushing baseballs and destroying worlds lately. So I would stay away from that. I would probably lean into some of those Yankees stacks. Montgomery on the other side, he's been pitching well. We talk about him not being a DFS pitcher all the time, and he's really not. He doesn't get enough strikeouts, but he is 22.8% strikeout rate this year, so it's okay. It's league average-ish. He's generating 27.5% soft contact. That's third among all starters in baseball who have at least 30 innings so far this year. His 38 and 2/3 innings for the year doesn't qualify for actual qualified starters, but if you adjust the sample, he's right there. So among the best in baseball, inducing soft contact, keeping the ball in the yard. So I could argue for a little bit of Monty, maybe, depending on what the slate looks like. 7,200 doesn't really put him in that range of being a super cheap SP2 that's going to get you to a lot, though. So a little bit of a dicey play. This Jays lineup, 17th in baseball with a 172 ISO, but their 113 WRC plus is very good against lefties, and they only strike out around the league average, so not a great spot for them either.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this with the injuries the Yankees have had all year long, but they are finally getting healthy. They did not have a great performance here on Sunday against the Red Sox, losing 10-2. But this is something we talked about on Friday. MLB, live before lock. Obviously we saw Stant came back, Judges came back. LeMahieu is just hitting the cover off the ball right now. Luke Voigt, I mean, he's just having an unbelievable season. So this is a team that's getting healthy at the right time. And, it was a week ago, I want to say when I did Live Before Lock with Alex last Tuesday, we were kind of talking about, and of course, I want to say that might have been the day Stant came back. Maybe Stant came back a day or two later. But we were talking about hey, this is probably, you're getting to the point where these may be the final days of sneaky Yankee stacks just because they're getting healthy.
Yeah, we had seen them go through that tough stretch. You and I talked about it a couple of times several weeks ago, where from the middle of August to the very first few days of September, they were dead in the water. The lineup was not producing, was not hitting well. And then they gradually started getting a couple of these guys back. They started getting production from some of the other hitters. And like Luke Voigt was carrying them through that stretch. Clint Frazier was hitting a little bit. But now they've loaded back up, and the lineup's just humming. So, yeah, they had, I guess, a little bit of a rough day. Thanks a lot for mentioning that the Red Sox beat them today. I wasn't paying attention. I told you I didn't know what happened in baseball. But, that's. I think we can definitely take a peek at this Yankees lineup, though. From top to bottom, they're just going to be loaded. You mentioned LeMahieu. For my money, he's the best overall hitter in baseball. I mean, the guy just gets on top of everything. He can hit to all fields. Just a base hit machine. Great eye, great on base. His 422 on base. This is worth actually looking at. Let me move your little box where I can see you. 368, 422, 626 in 180 plate appearances this year with a 258 ISO, a 185 WRC plus. That's a killer line. Guy's worth every penny they pay him and more. Love DJ LeMahieu there. And then you get into Judge. You mentioned Stanton's back in the lineup. Voigt is killing everything. And then you got a nice mix of the different outfielders depending on who's in the lineup, with Frazier, with Brett Gardner, who's been swinging the bat a little bit better, Tauchman if he's in there, Hicks if he's in there. So a lot of different things, a little bit of position flex in some of those guys too.
In terms of the Blue Jays, is there anything from the hitting side that you could potentially be targeting on Monday?
Yeah, I mentioned the overall WRC plus against lefties is pretty good. So I think we can get to some builds there with some of those quality right-handed hitters in that lineup. Kevin Biggio, if I remember, doesn't have bad same-handed matchups either. He's a lefty, should be hitting near the top of the lineup. But then you get into like a Randall Grichuk, a big righty bat with tremendous power. Vlad Guerrero Jr. has not really produced to everybody's lofty expectations for the kid, but he's still been a very good hitter in his brief career for a young guy coming up. Lourdes Gurriel, similar deal, very, very good hitter at 27. So you've got a lot of bats that I like in that lineup. So I definitely think we can build and attack some of that Jordan Montgomery as well.
Next up, we have got the Brewers and the Reds. Brandon Woodruff will be going for the Brewers. Luis Castillo going to be on the hill for the Reds. DK has a $9,800 price tag on Castillo. There was no price tag when I looked on FanDuel and Yahoo for Woodruff. $8,700 on DK, $8,200 on FanDuel, and $37 on Yahoo.
37 on Yahoo. That's for Woodruff? That sounds like a bargain. Yeah, I like that. I like the sound of that price. Just I'm not looking at the full slate, but I'm assuming some of the other guys, so there's a couple like a DeGrom would probably be in the 50-something range, I would imagine. So yeah,
closer to 60 than he is 50.
How's it? Worth it though. Worth it. We'll get there. Woodruff is in a tough spot. This Reds lineup is very good. Their 204 ISO is sixth best in baseball against righties. 101 WRC plus is right on the average. 24.8% strikeout rate, so there are some strikeouts there for them, but a 12.3% walk rate. So they're good hitters. They get on base, and they can get into some of that power and create some opportunities for themselves. Woodruff's pitching very, very well, though. 26.8% strikeout rate for his career, 0.98 home runs per nine. This year getting 13.4% swinging strikes, 48% ground ball rate, only 28.1% hard contact, so among the league leaders in limiting hard contact. 60 innings pitched, that's the sixth best among pitchers with 60 innings pitched, that hard contact number. So just pitching very well. I get a pretty decent projection on him, despite the Reds offense that I do like and will probably get to some of. At that price, I think I can get to some Woodruff here as an SP1 probably on DraftKings, an inexpensive SP1. And then I like him on the one-pitcher site too at 8,200.
Looking at Luis Castillo in his last three starts, 6 innings pitched, 3 starts ago. Then he came back with a complete game. And in his last outing, he had 7 innings pitched. He has struck out 10 in his last, 6 in the previous one, and 8 before that. Lowest score on DK in his last 3 outings is 24.1, so he is pitching very well. Interesting note. I mean, look, this really has nothing, not a great impact on DFS, but MLB had this little note on here talking about Woodruff, saying the team went 18-4 in his 2019 starts. However, they're 4-5 when he's on the hill.
Interesting. That's like you said, probably not going to impact us for DFS too much, because we do worry about the win, but there's a little bit of wonkiness overall in that number just based on how this team performs offensively. But yeah, I mean, knowing that they're going up against Luis Castillo, you do have to take that into account. This could be another loss for the Brewers in a game where Woodruff ends up starting, but he's very, very good in the spot. So it's a tricky spot there. And then Castillo on the other side, you hit it on the head. He's been pitching just absolutely great. And he's going up against the Brewers lineup that is not good against righties. We've talked about them a few times. Good against lefties, bad on the other side. 159 ISO is 19th in baseball. WRC plus is 13% below average. They strike out 25.7% of the time. So this is a targetable spot with Castillo. I think we can definitely get to some shares of him. 9,800, not a terrible price on DK. 10-2, I'm willing to pay for him on FanDuel. So, yeah, I think we can definitely get to Castillo. And as far as bats go, I would prefer the red side. I don't think I would get to very much Brewers against Castillo here. Most of their hitters are better as righties against lefties, like we talked about. Maybe some one-off Christian Yelich, but he's likely to be relatively popular. So I don't know that I want any Brewers, really.
Yeah, I was thinking about those left-handed bats in the Reds lineup, which kind of made me wonder. It'd be interesting to kind of see as we go throughout Monday of where do the Reds come up in our top stack tool.
Yeah, definitely. Something I always like to check, throughout the day as I'm building lineups, as I'm making my notes for the various shows and everything. I always like to know where Alex is at. It just gives you the full spread of the entire board in one quick snapshot that you can see. So I love referring to that tool, and I'm going to be doing it with this team definitely. Because it's really key when it's a good team like this going up against a good pitcher. It's just one more little metric that I can push ownership one way or the other based on what Alex is seeing, in addition to what I'm seeing in my model and what everything's telling me and what's coming up in Cruncher. So totally with you. And yeah, if we can get to some bats like Mike Moustakas, like a Joey Votto in here, and then a Eugenio Suarez who has no problem righty, and Nick Castellanos. Maybe an Aquino, even in a righty-righty. I like the upside of that lineup. Nicky Senzel is back in that lineup as well. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of pieces in that lineup I like.
As I look over at Odd Shopper, I see that we have the Reds minus 136, so they are going to be the favorite in that game. Of course, if you're looking to find the best lines, that's where you got to go. Just go to Awesemo.com. Right there at the top of the page, you'll see Odd Shopper. Be sure to check out all the odds, whether it's MLB or any other sport. They're all up there right now at Awesemo.com. Next up, we have got the Cubs and the Pirates. John Lester going to be on the hill for the Cubbies, 2-2 on the year. He's got 38 strikeouts, taking on JT Brubaker, who is 1-2 with 36 strikeouts. And look, I'm not trying to be the president of the John Lester I hate him for DFS fan club, but I'm probably definitely on the board of directors.
I think I'm the guy who just writes angry letters to both sides and never gets it right on either one. That's I do not get Lester right very often. Unfortunately, he's won me a little bit over time, as I mentioned all the time with him, but he's probably lost me more where I've been wrong on him. I am getting a good mark on him again tomorrow. I will end up having him. I'm probably not sounding all that enthusiastic about it because I am not. 7,700 though, not a bad price to pay for him against this Pirates lineup, and that's really the story that we need to talk about here. They're 24th in baseball with just a 151 ISO against lefties. They do have a 104 WRC plus, so they create runs a little bit better than the average against lefties. Their 22.8% strikeout rate is not awful, but they don't pack a ton of power. So they don't pack a lot of home runs. So I think Lester could get by with his ability to keep the ball on the ground, keep the ball in the park, and not put too many guys on base, which will be the key for him. If he limits their ability to get guys on and create runs that way, I think we could get away with an okay Lester start here. He's only striking out 17% of hitters this year, giving up some home runs. He's a 5.01 xFIP to his 4.91 ERA, so it's all right there on the surface. Just 7.4% swinging strikes this year. It's really starting to sound like a sucker bet as I'm talking about it, but we're going to be rolling the dice with Lester. The price is probably right, so I think we can get to him, and it's a play against the Pirates.
Okay, so his price point, I'm going to mention what his price point is here. 7,700 DK, 7,900 on FanDuel, $32 on Yahoo. But I got to bring this up for you. September the 1st, Cubs at Pittsburgh. John Lester scored 1.4 points in 5 1/3 innings pitched. He gave up 5 earned runs, 8 hits, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts in 93 pitches.
There's a chance I could tell you what my shares of John Lester were that day, but I think I would be embarrassed because it's so high. I had so much of him that day. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. That's John Lester. That's the ride. It's the same matchup, and I like it again. And he's the kind of guy that could go out and have the complete opposite start against this team. That's just kind of who he's been, but he's not reliable. So it's definitely an uncomfortable play. Sometimes uncomfortable plays win GPPs, though.
Okay, here's the month of September DK points for you. 1.4, 0.1, 26.5, 6.3.
There's a little roller coaster action in there. It went up to the top of the roller coaster once.
And of course, on the other side, you got JT. He pitched against the Cubs back at the very beginning of the season. He's pitched them against twice. The first time he scored 11 DK points in 3 innings pitched. His last time against the Cubs was back on September the 3rd, scoring 18.5 in 5 innings pitched. In that game, he did have 5 strikeouts.
Yeah, that's about who he is. 35 and 2/3 innings. He's allowed 4 home runs, 4.16 xFIP to a 4.79 ERA. So tiny little bit of bad luck baked into his numbers overall. 22.9% strikeout rate. He's around league average. 10.7% swinging strikes. Getting 44% ground balls. He was over 50% ground ball guy in the minors, kind of part of his repertoire, part of what he relies on. Throws the sinker 34% of the time to help him induce those. And he gets a decent whiff on his slider that he throws to both hands. So he's got a reasonable out pitch. He has the ability to induce ground balls. I don't hate the pitcher in a different spot against a different team. I would probably be more inclined to go to him because actually the price didn't pop up. I do not think he's expensive though. I was going to quote the price, but do you have it right in front of you?
JT is 6,800 on DK.
Thank you. Yeah. So I knew it was cheap. So I like the price, but I don't love the matchup. This Cubs team is good. And they've got a 180 ISO in the split, 99 WRC plus right on average. They do strike out 25.3% of the time, so he could pick up one of those like 5-6 strikeout games, but I just think they're going to hang some runs on him. So not really a spot for me. Maybe I'll leave him in like 5-10% in my crunches and then roll out less than that probably.
I see myself going with some Cub stacks.
Yeah, I definitely think we can build with some Cub stacks, and that's the key if everybody out there doesn't already know, and hopefully everybody does. When we talk about these 5 to 10% guys, that does not mean don't play the offense on the other side. Usually that'll mean probably look at the offense on the other side, to be honest, if we're a little trepidatious about playing one of these guys. I love this lineup. Ian Happ is the guy I've talked about all year long. Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Wilson Contreras, one of the best and least respected catchers in baseball offensively, just never seems to get appropriate ownership and is not that expensive at only $4,400 on DK. Kyle Schwarber, Javi Baez. This lineup just keeps on giving. So even getting down to like a Jason Hayward down the bottom of the lineup, he's having a great year. Quietly, 297, 414, 516 split for Hayward with a 148 WRC plus and a 219 ISO overall. That's a killer year for Jason Hayward. So, yeah, I think we can definitely build with that stack.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where you got to look at the top stack tool. Of course, you are listening to the MLB Early Bird podcast. Of course, if you're listening to us on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. That does help us out a lot. Also, be sure you're subscribed to Awesemo channel right here on YouTube. Or if you're listening on one of our podcast channels, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you're always getting all the great content we have over here at Awesemo.com. Then we got the Marlins and the Braves. Trevor Rogers is going to be on the hill for the Marlins in this one. And of course, the Braves, man, this offense is killer. Especially if you can find them in that right spot, man, they can be, and that's, I know we've hammered this point home a couple of times, but this is where, when you can look at that top stack tool and kind of see where the Braves are if you can find them in the kind of these sneaky spots.
Yeah, and I tell you what, they've been landing in that sneaky spot more often than not lately. Basically because of their pricing, they're expensive and they're not easy to build with, and the optimizers don't get to them as easily. So you have to force them in. You have to make some tweaks and tell your optimizer what you want. And that's important when you're using Fantasy Cruncher or any other optimizer out there, guys, as well. Those are tools. So a lot of people just say, oh, Fantasy Cruncher gave me this. Well, Fantasy Cruncher didn't give you that. That's what you asked for. You have to tell Fantasy Cruncher how to build the lineups that you want. Otherwise, it's just going to spit out things based on what the projections are and based on what everybody else is getting. And you're going to be riding along with the public in a lot of cases where we want to build in Braves. We're going to see the Braves probably pop up near the top of the stacks tool tomorrow and probably be drawing a limited amount of ownership here. Rogers is a good prospect, but I don't think he's ready. He's a kid that is another one of these guys that has probably been promoted and probably up ahead of schedule just because it's a year with no minor leagues, just because they want to keep him pitching. So in his 21 innings, he's allowed 5 home runs, 4.16 xFIP to his 6 ERA, so a little bit of bad luck baked in there. He's induced 12.5% swinging strikes, and he was a 25% strikeout guy in the minors overall, so decent strikeout pitcher. But you hit it on the head. This Braves active roster, you have to move it back for a lefty to the start of last year. They did have some wonky results earlier this year that do have their numbers off a little bit because they haven't faced a ton of lefties. But if you move it back since the start of last year, the active roster, guys that are actually going to be in the lineup, 5th in baseball with a 209 ISO, 103 WRC plus is above average, only a 23.7% strikeout rate, not that bad, 8.4% walk rate. So they are just a killer offense. We know there's a ton of good righties in there. The lefties have no problem with same-handed pitching, not against a rookie especially. So fire away with the Braves for sure.
Yeah, I just think it comes down to ownership. I mean, that to me is going to be the big thing, is kind of where they, we talked about it on Friday, just everyone was going to be on the Dodgers. We all knew it. So we were kind of like, okay, and you had mentioned the Braves as potentially a spot to go to. So I think that's something to kind of look at here in relation to, it's only an 8-game main slate on DK, so maybe you can find some value in the Braves. As you look at the Marlins, I mean, are there maybe a one-off hitter that maybe is a favorite one-off hitter in this lineup for you?
We could probably pick off maybe like some Matt Joyce in there, or maybe a Corey Dickerson against Huascar Ynoa here. I don't think very much of Huascar Ynoa as a pitcher overall. 18.6% strikeout rate, 14.0% walk in his limited 18 2/3 innings, giving up 2 home runs. In the minors, he's a 20 to 30% strikeout guy. 10.2% swinging strikes in the majors, was around 12-ish in the minors. So he's got decent stuff, but I just don't think he's a killer prospect. He's ranked 11 in their system, but I just haven't seen much on him in a lot of prospect reports. I haven't seen him pop up too much. But he does have a good matchup here, and they are expecting him to go like 5. Marlins are 27th in baseball, 140 ISO, 95 WRC plus is below average, 24.4% strikeout rate in the split. So I definitely think for 5,600 on DraftKings, he's in play as a mix-in option that can save you money. And maybe you can roll him out a little bit with some of his own bats. And you get the bonus of they'll support his win equity by, if that stack goes off. So you get a little bit there, but he's going to have to deliver for you, get through those 5 innings, and they'll have the lead for that win to come through. So a little bit of a dice roll on the kid, but he doesn't cost much at all. So I think we can throw a couple of those bats at him like you asked, and I think we can throw him back at them in limited fashion.
Of course, we are telling you about that top stack tool. If you want to get access to that, our player projections, our ownership projections, the top pitchers tool, you got to sign up for an Awesemo Plus MLB weekly pass for $15.95. All you got to do is go to awesemo.com. Right there at the top left-hand side, you'll see Awesemo Plus. Just click on that. You get you all set up for MLB weekly pass for $15.95. And I highly, highly, highly recommend add Fantasy Cruncher to your lineup. You will thank me in the long run. As you're hearing this in audio, I can see Terry, and Terry's just shaking his head of, yes, add Fantasy Cruncher. Because I'll tell you, because I get a lot of people who ask me, and particularly on the MMA side of things, they'll ask me about Fantasy Cruncher and how to use it. I'm like, look, we got a ton of videos up on our YouTube channel that you can check out. But the one thing I like to do, I just do dummy crunches. So once I see the dummy crunch, then I look at ownership projections, and then I kind of put my own exposures in, and then I start kind of, going into the advanced settings and how many unique players I want. If I got this person, I don't want that person. So there's definitely ways to work that system. But man, Fantasy Cruncher, it's a game changer.
Absolutely. It's such a powerful tool. It's by far the best optimizer and the deepest out there. And I don't just say that because we work with them and we've got it available through our site and you can subscribe through us. I'm saying that because I actually use it and I actually win money with it. I would not say it otherwise. I would just keep my mouth shut and continue nodding at you and nobody would know. So yeah, it's a great, great tool. Something I've been doing for a couple of years now that's just real quick aside, getting back over to NFL before we continue on with baseball, is using it to build groups in NFL. We always talk about stacking in NFL, put wide receivers, tight ends with your quarterback, maybe your running back, bring a guy back from the other team, catch the rising tide of a game and really elevate your scores. You can use the rules within Fantasy Cruncher to set that up just by rule, tell it, automatically do this, but you can also build groups and really layer that in and refine that. So I've been doing that for years, seen good results with it. And now for the site, every Thursday I'm writing a column where I'm putting out what my groups would be for that week, giving you all the connections that you can make, and then I'm updating it overnight Saturday into Sunday morning. So there's a lot that you can do with this tool. And you don't have to get that crazy, crazy deep with it. Like you said, for baseball, I love to run just some empty crunches with nothing set, see where things are falling, see where a lot of the public's going to be, then tell it just loosely to do a couple stacks, see where that falls, see how that's going to be, run it with Alex's projections, put mine in there, run one with my home run model. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. It's a cool tool. I lose hours to it, but you don't have to. You can just subscribe and get good results with limited effort with it too. It's a fantastic tool.
So every time I do, every time I do MLB Live Before Lock with Alex, we always give our home run picks. I'll straight up be honest with you. When I start thinking who's going to get a home run, I go to your article first. I go, who does Terry like? Well, let me see who he likes tonight.
I appreciate that. I haven't totaled them up in a while for my daily home run picks. I was still batting over 300 last I checked, but I'm not sure where I'm at right now. But yeah, it's been fun picking them all year, and hopefully people are getting good value out of that column. I enjoy doing it.
I'm like, who does Terry have a high projection on tonight? So, and then I'm always trying to find. I'm always trying to find that sneaky one
every night. So good pickings.
Of course, we mentioned about DeGrom being the most expensive pitcher on the slate on Monday. He is going up against the Rays. Pete Fairbanks will be the opener for the Rays. Josh Fleming is expected to come in after him. So when you go into your DK player pool, you'll see that both of them are available on DK. Fleming 6,600, Fairbanks 4,000. Fleming not available on FanDuel. Fairbanks is 5,500. He's also 25 on Yahoo, but DeGrom 10,500 on DK, 11,500 on FanDuel, and $58 on Yahoo. Let me we typically start with the pitching, but let me kind of start with the hitting here. Any chance you go to a Rays stack against DeGrom?
Probably not. I do like to every now and then build those contrarian. Well, not every now and then. I do like to build contrarian stacks. I should start off with saying that, as you know. But I like to pick my spots, and I don't like to pick my spots against guys like Jake DeGrom. Even if he's going to be explosively popular, it's just such a thin needle to thread for this team to go off against him. It might be like, yeah, I'll throw one or two into the mix if I'm rolling out 150 lineups in one tournament and then 150 in another and 20 here, 20 there. I'll have some. I'll have a little bit, but it's not something I'm going to focus on. It would not be something that I would talk about as a play for me during the day. I usually like to do that against a high-owned pitcher of significantly less caliber than a back-to-back Cy Young Award winner who's on his way to a third.
Yeah, the thing about with the opener is kind of, how does that kind of, obviously you expect Josh Fleming's going to be the second guy in the lineup, but in terms of those Mets bats, are there certain ones that you believe if you're going to stack the Mets, there's a certain aspect of the lineup to be looking at as opposed to another?
So it's interesting with Fairbanks opening. He's kind of a high-end prospect of a guy as far as the caliber of his arm, but he's kind of aged out of that. He's like 26 now, I think. But he's got excellent stuff on two pitches. He's got a four-seamer and a slider, both heavy spin pitches that are induced swinging strikes. And he gets ground balls out of them, but he's not going to go deep into the game. But he might, if he goes 2 innings, he could take the top off of that lineup and take a full plate appearance away from half the lineup, which does potentially limit them. They get to Fleming after that. I like their chances against Fleming a little bit better rather than a kid who's like a flamethrower, a bullpen type of guy, which is what Fairbanks is profiling as these days. I do really like that Mets lineup, though, as you know, as we've talked about a few times through the season. So I probably will roll them out in the mix. If everything goes to plan, it shouldn't be a problem for them. I do get good numbers against them, even with like a full if I put it in as a full appearance of Fairbanks or a full appearance of Fleming, I would get good numbers on them. So I will have some Mets tomorrow. I'll be very interested to see how they rank out in the top stacks, of course. And I'll make some of my decisions based on that, based on their popularity. I do really like the pricing. Everybody's below $5,000 in that lineup now, so that's another interesting tick in their favor. And just in general, 124 WRC plus against righties, 22.1% strikeout rate, so they're not terrible striking out. 184 ISO hitting for a reasonable amount of power as a lineup. So yeah, even with the opener situation, I can definitely roll some Mets out there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely a way you have to look at. Then we're going to have the Cardinals and the Royals. Adam Wainwright going to be on the hill for the Cards. He is 5-1 on the year. He's got 44 strikeouts on the year, taking on Carlos Hernandez, who last pitched back on September 12th against Pittsburgh, which was his first MLB start.
Yeah, Hernandez is another guy, kind of a back-end prospect. Not back-end, I shouldn't say that because he's like their 12th overall prospect, but a lesser prospect in their system. He's not pitched above A-ball, but he got promoted and is getting a little cup of coffee here in the last week of the season. 15.8% strikeout rate in his 9 1/3 innings. It's 3 games, 1 start, I believe. In the minors, he's around a 25% strikeout guy, good swinging strike rates. But over that very small sample in the show, he's only at 8.8% swinging strikes. So I would expect major league hitters probably are able to get to this kid. He probably doesn't have the stuff to profile very well. The Cards, however, 29th in baseball with a 132 ISO in the split. 95 WRC plus is below average. 23% strikeout rate is not terrible, but not great. 10.3% walk is okay, so they'll get on base a little bit. I would probably lean toward the Cards lineup. I'm not afraid of the kid, but it's not a terrible spot for him. And then Waino on the other side is actually kind of interesting, which is surprising at this point in his career, but he's been pitching pretty well. He's 4.21 xFIP to that 2.87 ERA. So he's getting a little bit lucky. There's a 2.28 batting average on balls in play against baked into those numbers, but he's inducing 11% swinging strikes, which is the highest of his career, which is crazy. He's added a lot of spin, not a lot, but he's added a fair amount of spin to his already impressive curveball, and he's increased his whiff on that pitch, and he's using it more. So that's it's brought his strikeout rate back up. It's 21%. It's back up a little bit. So against the Royals, they're 23rd in baseball in the split, 151 ISO, 11% below average against righties and creating runs, 24.7% strikeout rate. I think there's a good game to be had here for Waino. So, yeah, I think we can get to him.
So there's 3 pitchers on the slate on Monday on DK that are 9K and above. Wainwright, Castillo, and DeGrom. If you're ranking them 1, 2, 3, where does Wainwright fit into that equation?
Is it 2010 or 2011, somewhere around there? What year are we doing this in? Yeah,
it would be in 2020.
Thank you for bringing me back to earth on that price. I hadn't noticed where the price tag was. I do not like that price. I was in my brain as I was talking about that. I was thinking of more in that maybe Herman Marquis 8,300-ish kind of a range. So Woodruff 8,200 kind of range. So that's what I would be willing to pay for Waino. If he's going really under-owned, which I expect he will be at that price, I can still get over the field on him, which will be the important part. So I'll be curious to see where he lands in the top starters tool, which is the same as the top stacks that we've talked about only for pitching. So definitely want to get a glance at him tomorrow at that price tag. I'm going to be very curious to see what Alex is going to do with him.
Yeah, so just kind of a note, his last start against Milwaukee, which he went 7 innings pitch and had 9 strikeouts, his DK salary was $8,400. So we're seeing an $1,100 bump. Prior to Monday, his most expensive salary in the year was against the Reds back on September 11th, where he was $8,800. So nice little price jump that we're seeing here for him.
So what you're telling me is I was just enthusiastically endorsing Adam Wainwright as his most expensive price probably in like 3 years.
Look, great. You know what? I would say I do tend to like that top of that Royals lineup in general.
Yeah.
Especially Sal Perez in a catcher role is always kind of, and you look at Mondesi has started to kind of come around here over the last week or two or so. Yeah. Merrifield's had a nice year. So I do find myself looking at that Royals kind of on a daily basis, kind of looking at a 1-2-3, 1-2-3-5 type stack.
Yeah, and they're a team that pops up a little bit for me. And the important thing to note about that, with as far as optimizers and as far as Fantasy Cruncher, particularly, I think this is the lineup that they used today or possibly even yesterday. But just looking at it, guys like guys like O'Hearn, Nicky Lopez, Alex Gordon, even in the back end of this lineup, and Gordon could be hitting as high as 5th. Those guys are very cheap. $2,100 for Alex Gordon, $2,500 for O'Hearn, $2,400 for Nicky Lopez. So those guys are very, very cheap. So they kind of pull a lot of this team into optimizers as well. But I do like the top end of the lineup, the guys that you're talking about. Those are the guys that I'd be enthusiastic about playing. So what I'm getting at is it's important to make sure that you're using your individual player ownership caps in the right way, so that when you do crunch lineups, you're getting to the right parts of this lineup, because you don't necessarily want to be playing the back end where it's a little bit weak. Guys who are carrying sub-Mendoza slashes, not necessarily the guys you want. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head with Sal Perez, one of my favorite catchers in the league, one of the best offensive catchers in baseball. Only $4,600, so not a bad price tag on him. The 2 hitters above him, Merrifield and Mondesi there. Wish they had Jorge Soler in the lineup, protecting all those guys with his big power. But even with Hunter Dozier, Gordon, and Michael Franco in there, I think you can get to some of that.
And then 2 more games here left on the slate before we get out of here for this edition of the MLB Early Bird Podcast. We got the Astros and the Mariners. Lance McCullers will be on the hill for the Astros, and Marco Gonzalez will be on the hill for the Mariners. Marco Gonzalez 6-2 on the year, 53 strikeouts on the air side. Lance McCullers 3-2 on the year with 40 strikeouts.
Yeah, Marco's another one of those Mariners pitchers who's been kind of pitching pretty well, limiting power a little bit. 56 2/3 innings, only 5 home runs allowed. The whole staff has been kind of good at that, and they're all throwing that cutter. So I assume, I haven't actually read any stories about their pitching philosophy, their pitching coach's philosophy or anything, but I assume that's just a big part of it because all these guys are throwing that cutter, and it's been effective for most of them. But the real story here is this Astros lineup against lefties. We don't really have to go too deep into what Marco's been doing because they're first in baseball with a 228 ISO, a 129 WRC plus, puts them 29% above average, and only a 16.6% strikeout rate against lefties. That's killer. This is a tough matchup for Marco. So he's a guy I've been getting to a little bit lately with all the quality he's been showing. He's only 7,600. If you want to be super sneaky and crafty, get crafty with a lefty, maybe. But it's not a spot for me. Not against this Astros team. They just brutalize left-handed pitching. So that's a tough ask. 8,500 on FanDuel is almost an impossible ask. I don't think we can do that at all. McCullers on the other side against the Mariners lineup, though, definitely want to get to some of that. He is pitching pretty well overall. 3.94 xFIP to that 4.87 ERA, so he's getting a bit unlucky. 11% swinging strikes, still decent. It's down a bit from where he was, 13% previously. But overall, pitching pretty well, limiting home runs. 44 and a third innings, only allowed 4 homers. That's a 0.81 home run per 9. Throwing 40% sinkers, setting up his curveball and his changeup, gets good whiff on those. Mariners 24th with a 151 ISO. WRC plus is 108 though, so they are a little frisky as we've seen. They create runs a little bit better than the average against righties. But they're 23.6% strikeout rate. He's a good enough pitcher that I trust him that he's going to put up a good start here and sit down some of these guys with some strikeouts for us. 8,300, I like the price tag on DraftKings a lot.
Interesting salaries for Marco here on the 3 different slates. While on DraftKings, he's 7,600. You mentioned about FanDuel, 8,500, $44 on Yahoo. So you are having to pay up for Marco in the spot. On the other side, McCullers, 8,300 on DK, 8,700 on FanDuel, $33 on Yahoo. And a really interesting note here on MLB.com about Marco. After taking the loss to Houston the opening day, which was his worst outing of the season, allowing 4 runs, 3 earned on 5 hits and 4 1/3. Since then, he is 6-1 with a 3.27 ERA. And this is, I think, one of the more interesting notes. In 52 and a third innings in those starts, he only has walked only 4 guys.
That's impressive. That's how you get to the 2.2% walk rate on the season that I didn't mention. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, he is pitching very, very well, demonstrating excellent control, not allowing a ton of opportunities. But it's just about how good this Astros lineup is, and they're basically healthy. So everybody's in the lineup. They draw 9.9% walks against lefty pitchers, so they've got a little bit of patience there. And just overall, they're just too good, top to bottom. Springer, Altuve, Brantley suffers a little bit in the power department, but his slash is okay from the average and the on-base perspective in the split. Bregman is a righty, just brutalizes lefty pitching. Kyle Tucker is very good against lefty pitching in a same-handed matchup. Correa been struggling a little bit in the power department this year, but still very, very good. It's just a good lineup. So, yeah, Marco is a tough ask for me. That price on Yahoo is, wow. I could not justify that. That's crazy. I love the price on McCullers over there, though. McCullers and Woodruff all day long on Yahoo for me. Those are 2 killer prices comparatively.
And I want to say this will be the Mariners' first game actually in Seattle in like a week.
Oh, that's right. I hadn't even thought of that. That's right. Yeah, back home after, I don't want to say the fires are out, but I guess, the air quality's improved and things are a little bit better. So, that'll be interesting coming home. But, yeah. I'm not sure I need to lean into the lineup because it's back at home or anything. If you wanted to take some shares out of it, you've got J.P. Crawford, Dylan Moore having a good season from the top of the lineup. Kyle Lewis we've talked about, and Kyle Seager. That would be basically the long and short of it for me. Is like the top 4 hitters in this lineup. Maybe you could squeeze in a Ty France. You could talk me into it, I guess, but I don't love the spot there.
And then our final game of the night will be in San Fran. The Giants playing the Rockies. Marquez going to be on the mound for the Rockies, 2-6 on the year, 63 strikeouts. Taking on Cueto, who's 2-1 the year with 48 Ks.
Cueto facing the Rockies, who we know are bad on the road, bad against righties, but Johnny Cueto's not that good anymore. He's bad. So overall, 20.3% strikeout rate for his career. This year, he's 21.1% strikeout rate. That's up a little bit. 52 and 2/3 innings, only he's allowed 7 home runs. Not totally awful. 4.79 xFIP and a 4.78 ERA. So he is just exactly who he looks like. 8.9% swinging strikes. That's actually up a little bit from last year, but it's down overall for his career. He's done okay limiting the hard contact, which has resulted in those, being able to somewhat limit the home runs, but just doesn't strike out enough guys, doesn't induce enough swing and miss. He's just not a pitcher I trust anymore. So I think we can probably roll a little bit limited of the Rockies maybe, and I don't really want to get to too much Johnny. 8,600 is too big a price for me on DraftKings. 8,000 probably too big on the one pitcher site. I don't have his Yahoo price, but I'd be surprised if it was something where I'd be enthusiastic about it.
Johnny Cueto's price on Yahoo, $36, $8K on FanDuel, $8,600 on DraftKings. On the other side, Marquez, he's $36 on Yahoo, $8,300 on FanDuel, and $7,800 on DK.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're playing on Yahoo, there's just no need to go dumpster diving when you're in that $30 tier. There are good pitchers in there, and Marquez is one of them. Honestly, I like Marquez overall. He's actually a better pitcher at Coors Field this season on the road. He's got a 4.14 xFIP, 3.67 at Coors, so he does very well at home. But he's pretty good on the road as well. He's only allowed 6 homers in 68 and 2/3 innings. He goes deep into games. 3.88 xFIP overall to a 4.33 ERA. So again, pitching very, very well. 23.9% strikeouts against righties, 19.7 against lefties. Giants lineup, they've been frisky. They've been good. 10th in baseball with a 183 ISO against righties, 113 WRC plus. They strike out 23.2% of the time. So it's not the easiest spot in the world for him. But I do like the pitcher. And I do think he's got some good stuff that works well against this lineup. I don't expect that he's going to be crazy popular tomorrow, and I like the price at 7,800 on DK and in the 30s there on Yahoo. So I think that's a spot I can get to, but I probably would also roll in limited fashion with some of those bats we like from the Giants that have been just doing it somehow all year long, despite not actually being good at baseball. I don't know how they're doing it.
Is there a favorite bat you have in terms of Monday's slate with the Giants?
Just taking a peek. I mean, I could always get to a Brandon Belt at just 3,200. I like that lefty bat hitting cleanup there. I don't think it'll be a wildly popular play. Yaz at 5,400, I just have a hard time justifying just on the fact of who he is. But he's been producing all year long. And then Alex Dickerson I like in there. So there's some quality bats, some frisky bats in there.
And, of course, everyone's got to go over to Awesemo.com to check out your home run articles, your stack articles. Let everyone know what they can expect on Monday from you.
Yeah, so we've got quick hits will be coming out sometime in the next few hours overnight when I get a chance to knock that out and get everything updated. Then we'll have stack slants during the afternoon tomorrow. I'll also be on the show in the morning for the strategy show, and then I'll be on in the evening live before lock. So you've got wall-to-wall baseball from me. So one of those days you guys better hope I'm right about stuff.
Of course, I'll be back on Awesemo on Tuesday, as typically I do host the NBA Live Before Lock on Monday, but we have no game on Monday, so no NBA Live Before Lock. So I'll be back on Tuesday for MLB Live Before Lock. Myself and Alex will get you ready for Tuesday night's slate of MLB action. But that is going to wrap it up for this edition of the MLB Early Bird Podcast. Of course, be sure to check out our sponsor, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They are the most trusted name. Be sure to check them out. They do have CSV upload, CSV edit features now available. Make better choices. Choose Yahoo Daily Fantasy. We appreciate everyone tuning in today to this edition of the MLB Early Bird Podcast.